What the hell is going on with the Army's Bradley replacement? For more than 40 years, the US Army has been trying to send the Bradley fighting vehicle off to live on a farm, and for more than 40 years it has failed. From the Future Combat Systems program to the ground combat vehicle, every attempt has collapsed under its own weight. But the Army says this time will be different. Two industry teams are now literally bending metal on prototypes for the XM-30 Mechanized Infantry Combat Vehicle, which is supposed to be the Bradley successor. The question is, what makes this effort any different from all the others that came before it? Welcome back to Task and Purpose. I'm Kyle, and today we are going to talk about the Army's latest and greatest efforts to finally replace the Bradley. We're going to break down the past attempts, what leaders want in this one, and we're going to take a good look at the options that have made it farther than any others before it. But before we get to that, a quick word from today's sponsor, Odoo. If you're in manufacturing, you already know the challenges. Orders stack up, delays start sneaking in, all your tools that are supposed to make your life easier start to do the opposite. Odoo fixes that. Odoo gives you one dashboard where you can manage assembly stations, check load times, track work orders, keep up with shipments. Everything that happens on your floor, you can see. Their barcode app makes it easy to scan and log components in real time right from the production line. So you spend less time fixing data errors and more time getting orders out the door. Need to check a worksheet or bill of materials? It's all right there, right in the dashboard, connected and synced. With Odoo, you have everything covered from planning to production with smooth and simple software. Start with your first app for free at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com. You'll be happy you did, and we'd like to thank Odoo for sponsoring today's episode. The M2 Bradley first rolled into service in 1981 as the Army solution for moving infantry across the battlefield alongside tanks. It was fast, relatively well protected for its time, and armed with a 25mm Bushmaster cannon, a coaxial machine gun, and a TOW anti-tank missile launcher. It entered service just as the Cold War was heating up, but it never actually got to face the evil empire as Reagan labeled the Soviets. Instead, it proved itself in Desert Storm, where Bradley crews destroyed more Iraqi armored vehicles than the Abrams did. But its weaknesses also showed: limited protection, small troop capacity, and a tendency to catch fire after it was hit. Ever since, the Army has been trying to build something that could replace it. The seemingly never-ending quest for a vehicle that's more survivable, more digital, and better suited for modern warfare continues to this day. Here we are in late 2025 and the Bradley is still going stronger than ever, it seems. The Army is now fielding the M2A4E1 variant in limited numbers, which adds an upgraded powertrain, new electronics, and the Iron Fist active protection system from Elbit Systems. In Ukraine, the M2A2 ODS variant has finally gotten to face down the Soviet tanks and vehicles it was meant to kill, and by all accounts, it has performed exceptionally well. To this point, nothing meant to replace it has been successful, in large part because the Bradley is so effective, despite its rocky start. Before we get into the options to dethrone the Bradley, let's get into the failed efforts that came before it. The first serious attempt to replace the Bradley dates back to the mid-80s. As the original Nintendo Entertainment System, Miami Vice, and MTV dominated American culture, the Armored Systems Modernization Program aimed to create a whole new family of vehicles to dominate the battlefield. The excess of the 80s didn't stop at hairbands and Bolivian marching powder, and the Army set out to create 4 new vehicles and 24 different variants. This was a hugely ambitious undertaking that, to nobody's surprise, was cancelled in 1992 after costs ballooned and the Cold War ended with the Soviet Union falling apart in embarrassing fashion. In 2003, the Army swung for the fences again with the Future Combat Systems, or FCS, a program that envisioned lightweight, networked vehicles connected through a digital command web. The idea was to make up for thinner armor with better situational awareness. FCS spent billions of dollars and produced some impressive prototypes, but none that could actually survive a battlefield full of RPGs and roadside bombs. After Iraq and Afghanistan showed how lethal those threats were, the whole thing collapsed in 2009. Then came the Ground Combat Vehicle program in the 2010s. It was supposed to finally give the Army a true Bradley successor. This iteration was to be heavily armored, high-tech, and able to carry 9 soldiers. But it turned out so large and heavy that it barely fit on a C-17 transport plane, and each one was projected to cost more than an Abrams tank, so it was cancelled in 2014. The Army tried to reboot it again in 2018 under the Next Generation Combat Vehicle Program's Optionally Manned Fighting Vehicle, or OMFV. The initial bid process did not go well. No competitor could meet the Army's requirements in time, and the only prototype submission from General Dynamics Land Systems was disqualified for being too heavy. The program was completely reset in 2020 when the Army decided it would shoulder more of the financial burden because apparently the competitors weren't too excited to dump millions into a program that could be cancelled like all the others. 5 potential manufacturers were awarded contracts totaling just about $300 million in 2021 to develop concepts, but only 2 survived: General Dynamics Land Systems and American Rheinmetall Vehicles. Their entrants are what we're going to discuss in detail in just a few minutes. In 2023, the service renamed the program the XM30 Mechanized Infantry Combat Vehicle and issued the final update to its original RFP, which brings us to today. So the XM30 is still going, but what does the Army actually want out of it? Let's discuss that. The XM30 is meant to carry a crew of 2 and 6 soldiers or dismounts, roughly matching the Bradley's capacity minus 1 crew member. This allows the Army to maintain the current squad configuration that works with the Bradleys. Like we discussed in the CV90 video, many decisions on what weapons to use are based on doctrine. If you can slide a new weapon in without changing tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, that just makes it a lot easier for everybody involved. Joining other programs like the M1E3 Abrams, it will feature hybrid electric propulsion, giving it better range, fuel efficiency, and a reduced thermal and acoustic signature for stealthier operations. When even cheap DJI drones have thermal cameras, sitting there idling a gas engine just to use the radio is inviting disaster. And requiring less fuel also reduces the logistical burden, and logistics wins wars. The Army also wants it to be optionally manned, meaning it could, in theory, operate remotely in certain scenarios, but it's still being designed primarily as a crewed vehicle. Much like the M1E3 program that we discussed in another video, the goal isn't to build a robot, it's to build a vehicle that can evolve in rapidly changing environments without the need for a complete overhaul. While we have pretty incredible autonomous aerial vehicles, making autonomous ground vehicles comes with some bigger challenges. The fact is that the human brain is just still far better in navigating the constantly changing terrain, weather, and battlefield conditions than a computer, so don't get too worried about Skynet just yet. A big part of the XM30 program is open architecture. That means the vehicle's computers and sensors are designed so that upgrades can be swapped in easily without redesigning the whole vehicle. In theory, that allows the Army to integrate new sensors, active protection systems, or even unmanned capabilities over time. Building on that open architecture, it will also include a built-in active protection system and modular armor packages that can be adjusted based on the threat environment. The Army has stressed that the vehicle must be survivable enough to fight alongside the next generation M1E3 Abrams. This is where things get exciting. The XM30 will be equipped with a 50mm main gun, or at least a 30mm that can be easily upgraded to a 50mm according to the RFP. The gun that seems to be the favorite is the XM913 Bushmaster 3 cannon, a massive jump from the Bradley's 25mm gun. This will allow it to engage modern armored threats and even drones more effectively thanks to programmable airburst rounds, while also providing much greater standoff range. And importantly, whatever replaces the Bradley must be deployable by air, rail, and ship without the logistical nightmares that plagued earlier prototypes. The Army claims this time will be different because the program is modular, incremental, and data-driven. By using digital twins, essentially 3D simulations of each design, engineers can test components virtually before they ever build them, saving time and money. This is also happening under a different strategic environment. The Army is perpetually modernizing, but this time that means cutting certain heavy units to free up money for that. They killed the M10 Booker, Apaches are being culled, and Strykers are getting a lot less attention. Programs that can prove immediate tactical benefit, like the XM30, are the ones most likely to survive. Still, caution is warranted. The Army made similar promises with the M10 Booker light tank before canceling it in 2025 over cost and requirement creeps that made it a chunky boy. The same goes for the Abrams X demonstrator, which was ultimately folded into the M1E3 program instead of entering production on its own. The XM30 could easily face the same budgetary and conceptual headwinds if the Army's requirements shift again. But with two competitors bending metal, as they say on the XM30, this one does seem to have more promise, so let's finally talk about that. Two teams remain in the XM30 competition, General Dynamics Land Systems and American Rheinmetall Vehicles. Both are now entering the prototype phase, literally bending metal to build their first vehicles for Army testing. General Dynamics is building its XM30 around the Griffin 3 platform, which has been in development since 2018. The Griffin design has already appeared at multiple defense expos, serving as a testbed for the Army's next-generation turret systems. The GDLS prototype will feature the unmanned 50mm XM913 turret, allowing the crew to sit in a separate armored capsule inside the hull. This design improves crew survivability and frees up internal space for dismounts or systems. The 50mm cannon gives it far more punch than the Bradley's current 25mm gun, too. With a crew of 2 and space for 6 soldiers in the back, it would maintain the current structure of Bradley formations. The vehicle will also use a hybrid electric drive, which General Dynamics says can support the Army's goal of silent watch and reduced heat signature. It's also compatible with the same digital systems planned for the M1E3 Abrams, allowing shared logistics and maintenance pipelines. In terms of protection, the company is expected to integrate Iron Fist or a similar active protection system, plus modular armor packages. The company also highlights its deep relationship with the Army. It already builds the Abrams and the Stryker, and that gives it an edge in supply chain integration. The biggest concern is that General Dynamics' design could end up being too heavy or too conservative. Right now, a Griffin 3 comes in at about 40 tons. That's about the same as the Bradley, but who knows what the final variant will look like. Critics also argue that it just looks like an incremental evolution of the Bradley rather than a leap forward, though the Army might actually prefer that after decades of overreach and failure. The second team, led by American Rheinmetall Vehicles, is offering a US-built version of the KF-41 Lynx infantry fighting vehicle. This design is already in service with Hungary and was a finalist in Australia's Land 400 program, giving it a head start in real-world testing. It would still require some overhauls to meet the Army's requirements, though. Rheinmetall's proposal uses an open digital architecture built for modularity from the start. Currently inside the Lance 2.0 turret is a 30mm cannon, which has a high degree of automation. The vehicle carries a crew of 3 and 8 infantry and can be adapted for command, reconnaissance, or even counter-drone roles. The Lynx chassis uses a hybrid propulsion system with a so-called silent mode, reducing its acoustic and thermal signature, a potentially huge advantage in drone-heavy battlefields like Ukraine. Rheinmetall has also pitched the ability to integrate loitering munitions or drone launchers directly into the vehicle. It is larger than the Griffin, weighing about 44 tons depending on configuration. This would still make it air transportable by stripping some components off, but the Army seems to be exceptionally weight conscious these days. The US branch of Rheinmetall, based in Alabama, is working with Raytheon, Textron, and L3 Harris to localize production and meet Army sourcing requirements. That US US footprint would make it more politically viable, especially as Congress pressures the Army to keep manufacturing domestically. Rheinmetall's advantage is that its vehicle already exists in production form. The downside is that the Army may demand changes that complicate integration or increase cost. There are also questions about how much of the Lynx's advanced European tech can be realistically adapted to US systems and standards. Even if one of these two or even both get a contract, the Bradley is still not going away, so let's discuss that. Even as the XM30 takes shape, the Army continues to buy new Bradleys. The M2A4E1 model currently being fielded features a more powerful engine, new suspension, upgraded electronics, and the Iron Fist active protection system. These upgrades are meant to keep existing mechanized brigades combat ready through the early 2030s. According to Defense News, the Army plans to run the XM30 and the Bradley side by side for at least a decade. That slow transition is partly because of production limits and partly because of doctrine. The Army cannot afford to field an entirely unproven platform all at once. The result is that the Bradley, like the B-52 bomber or the M250 caliber machine gun, may outlive yet another one of its intended replacements. That's not necessarily a bad thing. The M2A4E1 with Iron Fist is still highly capable, and its continued service gives the Army breathing room to refine the XM30 rather than rushing it into production. So what happens next? Under current plans, both industry teams will deliver their full-scale prototypes, at least 7 but up to 11, to the Army in fiscal year 2026, which is now, but they have until next September. The Army will then conduct extensive testing evaluating survivability, mobility, lethality, and maintainability, and whatever other buzzwords they can throw in there. A winner is expected to be chosen by 2027, with low-rate initial production beginning by 2029 and full operational capability in the early 2030s. That timeline could easily slip. As of mid-2025, the Army has not yet finalized how many XM30s it intends to buy, nor how the vehicle will fit into evolving brigade structures. Force design changes and budget adjustments could alter procurement numbers significantly. Congress will also play a major role. The House Armed Services Committee has repeatedly pushed back on major Army modernization programs, especially when costs climb or timelines stretch. Given the history of the Bradley replacement saga, lawmakers are likely to keep the program on a short leash. Probably the biggest question is whether the Army can resist the urge to overload the XM30 with extra features. The temptation to add every new sensor, drone launcher, and AI package has killed multiple programs before. If the Army sticks to its stated priorities, a modular, crude, survivable vehicle with room to grow, it might finally break the curse. The Bradley replacement program is one of the longest-running sagas in US Army history. For decades, it's been a cycle of overreach, cancellation, and compromise. The XM30 represents a more restrained approach where they plan to build something that works now but can evolve later. But the Army made similar promises with the M10 Booker and Abrams X, both now shelved or absorbed into other programs, so this optimism comes with a healthy dose of skepticism. The Army has a pattern of chasing modernization dreams only to run headfirst into reality. So, will the XM30 finally replace the Bradley? It's possible, and it has probably the best shot of anything that came before it. The technology is more mature, the requirements are more realistic, and both contenders have proven track records, but until the first units are rolling out of factories and onto training fields, it's too early to call it a done deal. So for now, the Bradley keeps rolling, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I wrote this script and Savvy edited the video, and once again I'm going to take a little minute or two at the end to give some channel updates. So in previous videos I gave out my email, which is kyle.gunn@taskandpurpose.com, so that if you find yourself in the barracks over the holidays feeling a little low, maybe even not in the barracks, you're just feeling a little low and you're a service member, you're 18, 19 years old, you haven't been away from home on a major holiday, you're pulling bullshit duty when everyone else is home, and you're just in a bad spot, go ahead and email me. I really mean it. go ahead and email me. Just because I'm not in anymore doesn't mean I don't want to help take care of Marines, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, Guardians in the Space Force. It's something I really enjoyed when I was in, and so if I can do anything to help you out now, let me know. I haven't really pushed the store in a while, so go to store.taskandpurpose.com. We have this shirt, a lot of others. Code actually watch for 10% off. I'm going to shut up. My name's Kyle. I am your friendly ginger producer man. You are all dismissed, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for being here.